Hey, what's up, witches? Today I'm back with what might be a bit of a controversial video in some people's opinions because I'm going to be talking all about circle casting when it comes to witchcraft, magic, and spell work. And do you need to do it? So, this is going to be largely my own opinion based in this video. So, let's get into it. So, what does it mean to cast a circle when it comes to magic and spell work? You have some thoughts, feelings, and opinions on this topic, Merlin? So, to give a very, very brief summary of some of the basic origins of circle casting when it comes to magic, a lot of the basic traditions and premises and components of ritual that were devised and handed down through Gerald Gardner and Gardnerian Wicca were heavily based on and borrowed from esoteric texts from the Italian Renaissance and 14th and 15th century, such as the Key of Solomon and the Lesser Key of Solomon. And the Key of Solomon was basically a grimoire or spell book, which was attributed to the biblical King Solomon, but whose actual origins are probably traced more back to the Italian Renaissance and 14th, 15th centuries, when we had all those alchemists out there trying to delve into these mystical, esoteric crafts and things like that. It also borrowed very heavily, both the Key of Solomon and Gardnerian Wicca as a result, borrow heavily from traditions like Kabbalah and Jewish mysticism. And the Key of Solomon also, more importantly, contains several diagrams of things like pentagrams and magic circles. In this tradition, these elaborate preparations are necessary to perform all of these magical rites and rituals. And each of the items used in these rites and rituals must also be constructed of the appropriate materials and obtained during just the right time of the astrological season or the moon, etc., etc. And so this is very high ceremonial magic that we are talking about here. And a lot of these spells and circles, specifically mentioned in things like the Key of Solomon, were used primarily for summoning and containing the spirits of demons and or the dead. Now, if we move forward to traditional Wicca or traditional ceremonial magic, this is kind of where the origins of the ritual circle come from. So for a lot of the knowledge and the history for the Wiccan concept of the circle, I went back to my Silver Ravenwolf books, such as To Ride a Silver Broomstick and To Stir a Magic Cauldron. And in her chapters all about circle casting, she states that traditionally the Wiccan or traditional ceremonial magic circles were 9 feet in diameter. I don't know why the number 9, that's just the traditional number that was given. Not only that, but it's usually held that the circle must always be properly cast, and that those who are casting the circle must also usually be ritually purified in some way before they go to do the casting or the working. Furthermore, in the Silver Ravenwolf books, she gives some quotes from Gardner's protege, Doreen Valiente, where Doreen states that the magical circle is a fundamental requirement of all kinds of occult ceremonial work, and that the magicians of Babylon and Assyria used magic circles in their rites. Descriptions of their workings have come down to us, together with the name they gave to the magic circle, Usurtu. Now, I was really unsure what the source was for this information, especially since this is just a quote of a quote here. I'm quoting Silver Ravenwolf, who's quoting Doreen Valiente, who supposedly said this, that the magic circles can not only be traced back to what I'm assuming is like things like the Key of Solomon, if we are presuming that they really can trace their origins back to prehistory and ancient human civilizations and those biblical times, and not just the 14th, 15th century versions of the texts that were kind of rediscovered. But yeah, I thought that was interesting while going back over these books and doing research for this video, that she just kind of name drops Babylonian and Assyrians as having a specific name for a magical circle called Usertu. So I did just a brief Google search for the word just to see if I could find the Sumerian word and like just a dictionary translation of what it meant, just so I wasn't taking what was said in the Ravenwolf book at face value. And I did find a JSTOR article, which is a scholarly article, which did give a definition of the word Usertu in Sumerian as possibly coming from a Semitic word aseru, which means to enclose or hold under protection. So perhaps that wasn't entirely made up. I didn't really delve much further into it than that, than just trying to find the word and see if it did have a basic meaning of a circle or a magic circle, as Valiente claims. So I don't know if I would maybe have to do further research to see where that term is then, if it was actually applied back then to concepts like a magical circle. But yes, the root of the word itself does mean to enclose or hold under protection, much like a magical circle is used, which kind of brings me to the next portion of this video. What is the purpose of a magical circle? So according to Silver Ravenwolf, the purposes of a magical circle can be as follows. 1, to keep out harmful spirits and protect the practitioner who is in the circle, so keep harmful spirits out and protect the person within. Or 2, to contain the power until, the power that is raised and called up until the magician chooses to release it. Or 3, both 1 and 2. And she also does mention here the personal circle, which I think she kind of gives 2 different meanings here, an informal one and a formal one. And I'll get a little bit more into my opinions on that when I get to the section on my own personal opinions. But to Silver Ravenwolf, the personal circle can just be basically defined as the mental enclosure of your body with some sort of energy field. And this I do agree with, as far as like something that is practical and useful just in day-to-day, even if it's not for a magical working. If you saw my video all about magic for empaths, this is definitely kind of an informal thing that I will often do when I have to go be in a stressful environment or just a very busy, chaotic, highly stimulating environment, or just around a lot of other people. You can kind of cast an informal personal circle, as she calls it, which is just enclosing your own body and your own energy in a protective force field of sorts. And so some of the examples that she even used in the book, such as like a blue bubble or an egg, are techniques that I have intuitively personally used. So that I do find a use for. But Ravenwolf also states that the 4th option is those who don't cast a circle at all, and then goes on to say that these types of people, quote, normally do not believe in a power more potent or higher than themselves, not what I would call Wiccan theology, and that to be an accomplished working witch, you must be able to conjure any type of circle at any time. And this is where I kind of start to part ways from Wiccan theology and why I do not call myself a Wiccan, because this is where my own personal opinions start to differ a lot from Ravenwolf's and probably a lot of traditional magical practitioners. Because when it comes to casting a circle, especially for my own home or personal spell work or personal use, I don't really do it. So maybe that makes me a little bit of a chaos witch or a chaos magician. I'm going to insert a link in the description to a really great video from Kelly Ann Maddox talking all about the principles of chaos magic, because I kind of wanted to go do a little bit of research and watch some other people talking about chaos magic and what it was to them, just in yeah, in the course of researching this video, because I wouldn't really call myself a chaos witch or chaos magician per se, as that is kind of a specific label for a specific group of magic practitioners who just kind of deviate and separate themselves from the traditional ritual Wiccan way of doing things. But in Kellyanne Maddox's video, she does a really good job of basically just saying that chaos magic is just using your intuition and experimenting and finding what works, and just kind of, yeah, using experimentation to see what gets results and then repeat that experiment to see if you get the same results. You know, not to kind of break it down and put too like scientific a lens on it, but that's really what I do, is just practice magic intuitively, using what works for me, and not necessarily following a strict outline or ritual or set of steps. So I guess that would kind of lump me in as a chaos magician, but in my personal opinion, I don't see a need for casting a formal circle if I'm just doing a ritual working or a spell working in my own home, because to me, just with the regular cleansings and wardings and protections that I have on my property and my home, and my ritual spaces in particular, the way I see it, they are just in sacred space in and of themselves, and I don't really need to add any extra steps or formalize that when I'm sitting down to do specific workings. So at least not for me, just in the comforts of my own home, I don't personally see a need for circle casting, whereas you will find some solitary practitioners who will kind of, you know, cast an informal or a very formal ritualized personal circle for anything and everything they do. But I don't have time for that, or the attention span, frankly. But where I have started to really see a use and a benefit for circle casting is when I'm not on my home turf and when I'm participating in larger group rituals with other people. And in that setting, I have learned from trial and error and experience that there are some benefits to circle casting when conducting these large group rituals and summoning and calling up these larger, more potent energies. And to me, that is primarily because of something that I'm going to make a whole separate video on here coming up, which is the importance of proper guest host behavior, extending not only to other human beings, but also to the land and spirits that live all around us. So in my mind, if I'm going to an unfamiliar place or a new place, different land, different surroundings, and meeting up with a bunch of people, and we're calling down our gods and our ancestors or whatever rituals that we will be doing while we're meeting up, it's just proper guest behavior as people who aren't native to that land, and just out of respect to those that did inhabit that land and still their spirits still may inhabit that land, that while we are there, we use the circle during our rituals to just be respectful and help establish those boundaries so that the native spirits don't feel like we're coming in and just basically trying to colonize the place with our own god. It just helps me to establish those boundaries and parameters for what we're doing, and let any native entities or spirits or landvatir know that, hey, we're here, we're gathering, we're going to be raising some energies and inviting some gods and some other entities here to commune with us and gather with us, but it's just on a temporary basis. And so the circle helps to define the parameters of the space that we will be using and occupying, and who will be coming into that space while we're there, and then also be able to release and get rid of all of those energies and those beings and dismiss them, so that, yeah, we're not just kind of coming in and trampling all over other things or beings that are already living there. And then also, you know, just as someone that does work with Loki, and just, yeah, from previous experience that I had, seeing some chaos that ensued after performing my first big group ritual to the gods and not using a circle to contain those energies, I just, yeah, definitely learned through experience and trial and error that in those types of settings and for specific things and rituals, that it can be very beneficial not only to us as the practitioners, but also just respectful and useful for establishing boundaries and respect and just proper vibes with whatever is already inhabiting the land that we're working on. So when it comes to that, I have definitely found circle casting to be very beneficial, and I am taking some pages out of Silver Ravenwolf's books because I will say that they were very helpful for giving like basic outlines that you can use to develop your own personal or group rituals. So one thing that I was working on at the last Coven retreat that I went to was a heathen quarter call, where you will also see, along with the circle casting, things like the four guardians or the four watchtowers referred to or called upon a lot. So I am working on a heathen quarter call or a heathen circle casting for our intents and purposes, where we are specifically calling on the Norse pantheon of beings with the four Dvergar, who represent and hold up the four pillars of the world in the four cardinal directions, and then basically invoking Heimdall to summon the Bifrost as a way of calling down the circle to establish that connection of above and below.
Heimdall! I know you can hear me! Open the Bifrost!
So it's definitely still in its trial and experimental phases, still in development and testing phase. That's basically sums up my opinion on matters. There are definitely more traditionalist witches out there who are big believers in circle casting, like Silver Ravenwolf is, and thinks that you need to be able to do it anywhere at all times for all things and purposes. And then you have people like me who are just members of the Chaos crew and just, yeah, basically working intuitively and don't personally see a need for circle casting in my own day-to-day life or rituals. But if I'm leaving my home or working with large groups of people in unfamiliar environments, then kind of an informal personal circle casting to protect your energy or just establish healthy and respectful boundaries in an unfamiliar place or with unfamiliar people and spirits is useful. So that pretty much sums it up for this video. I just wanted to touch on this topic because it's one that I was researching and reading a lot about while reading the Ravenwolf books, and just while researching spell work and witchcraft in general. So I wanted to just jump in here and basically give you my 2 cents on the matter and tell you that I think we've kind of branched out and come a long way from the days of everything following a more strictly Gardnerian Wiccan tradition, and that there's a lot more room nowadays than maybe there was even a decade ago when Kellyanne made her first video talking about chaos magic. I know things like chaos magic and talking about like things like the left-hand path can still drum up a lot of chit-chat and controversy even nowadays, because it's just all based on our own perspectives and sense of morality and moral beliefs. And you know, me being a chaos kid and someone that works with Loki, I definitely, yeah, I think he would say that I'm a chaos magician and a chaos witch for sure. And others might also lump me in that category. I do not formally call myself that, but since I'm just out here casting magic all willy-nilly without the formality of a formal ritual circle, then yeah, I guess you could lump me under the chaos witches. But there was just a brief little history and some background info on circle casting for you. I hope that this video was interesting and informative for you, and let me know what your opinions are on circle castings, and do you need them, and when do you use them? So yeah, sound off in the comments down below, and as always, until next time, stay classy, pagans.